Hello, welcome back to the Pro-Pilot Playbook podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be covering one of our viewer or listeners' questions that was emailed in to us. I'm Sean Ritchie.
And I'm Mike Martin.
And, we created this whole thing, the Pro-Pilot Playbook, to help aspiring pilots navigate their careers. You can think of us as your personal career counselors to become professional pilots. And the whole thing was started because of all of the obstacles and hurdles, pitfalls that Mike and I had gone throughout our career progression, and realized that there was definitely a need for this type of thing. And That's how we ended up here today. So
that's right, man.
Yeah, the question comes to us from this was submitted on YouTube. And if you're listening on the actual iTunes podcast or one of the other 7 or 8 platforms we're on, you can see our faces on the YouTube channel, on the Pro-Pilot Playbook YouTube channel. But Patrick commented on one of the videos, asks a question. You could also email us the questions at podcast@propilotplaybook.com. But he says, I love your guys' channel. Would love to see another one on stuff a 1,400-hour CFI like myself can do during the pandemic to be competitive for an SIC position in a corporate job. He says, just wait it out. Or he also says, how do I navigate so many furloughed? Thanks.
Okay.
Real quick though, the 1,400-hour thing, what Patrick is speaking of is, to become an airline pilot or get that real first pilot job, the minimum is 1,500 hours. And that minimum is where you get your ATP, your airline transport pilot's license. So at right around 1,400 hours is where you're really, if you're in one of these, a flight instructor gig or you're, some other time building job, you're building that resume out. You're submitting applications, because most of these companies will hire you right about that window is opening up right before you hit 1,500 hours. You're going to interviews, and you're going to get your first real job. So that's why he's saying the 1,400-hour CFI. And CFI is Certified Flight Instructor. That is a typical time-building job for a pilot.
Yep. Great. Yeah, well, I can tell you, the second that I heard you say that question, it just popped in my head. I mean, I've got an immediate answer. It's probably Sean's too. Here's the thing. Well, first of all, there's several different aspects of corporate aviation. So when you say you want a corporate job, I mean, we talk about this in our program, but there's charter, there's flying for a big Fortune company, there's flying for one owner, there's all types of different corporate flying jobs, and we can get into that in a bit. But what I would say is to that, my initial reaction is the most important thing for this person to do is network. Network. Did I say? I was going to say Netflix. Yeah, watch Netflix.
Netflix. That's what you have to do.
Networking is absolutely crucial when it comes to flying corporate jobs. It's just like anything in life, but people like to do business with people they know. I mean, that's the key. However, when it comes to hiring a pilot, it's a very intimate job, and they want to make sure they're getting along with the person. When these corporate operators hire you, there's quite a bit of financial investment, a lot of times in training. I mean, some of these jets, they can hire even a load time guy off the street and have to invest $40,000 or $50,000 in training just to get this person approved on insurance. Well, you don't want to hire somebody off the street that you have no clue what they're about. They could be a great pilot, but they could have a terrible personality and you don't want to deal with them. Or they could be a terrible pilot, but a great personality. Either one of those, they're not going to work, and you just spent $50,000 on training the person. So networking is incredibly important. You're not going to get a job flying for Coca-Cola just mailing them a resume and saying, hey, my name's Sean, I'd like to work there. It's not going to happen. So how do you do that? Well, you've got to put yourself in a position where you're going to meet these corporate operators. And, there's several ways to do that. One of the most blatant ways is to hand deliver your resume in person. Try to talk to these people and try to get to know them, invite them to lunch, whatever you need to do to develop a rapport. So they say, hey, you're motivated, you want this. One of my friends who has the best corporate job that I probably know, he pursued this company so long. I know the chief pilot said when he hired him, he said, we didn't know when we had a position come available, we didn't know whether to hire you or put out a restraining order.
Right.
And he's been there like
yeah.
10 years. Yeah. So, this person is a pilot. He's got 1,400 hours. So he's hanging out at an airport. I would put myself in a position to be around these people with these jets and these turboprops and, talk to them about the planes and get to know the people, even if they're not hiring. And, you may end up flying right seat in some of these planes and not getting paid, but that's all an interview. I mean, that's an interview. And these guys are meeting you and they're deciding, hey, is this somebody you want to invest in? So, during his downtime, I would recommend that he hangs out at the airport. There's jobs you can do. Maybe flight instruction's slow right now. You could get a job at the FBO fueling planes or work in the desk or whatever. Right. Also, and these things will put you in proximity to these operators, which is going to give you access. This is all you're doing, to make that happen. So what's your reaction, Sean?
Well, right before I hit the record button on the Zoom podcast, we agreed we weren't going to plug the program in this one because I feel like we talk about the Pro-Pilot Playbook program every time. But I got to say, though, that this is a whole module of the Pro-Pilot Playbook program that we sell that organizes the whole thing. But we have one in there called How to Get Jet Time. Well, there's a couple different ones: how to skip flight instructing, how to get jet time, or whatever. And I'll give you the 40,000 foot overflight of it here, Patrick. And that is, Mike's saying hang out at the airport. Well, I don't know where you're flight instructing. I don't know where you're at. You could be out in the middle of Wyoming on some little strip and there's no corporate aviation. This works best. It
could be a Jackson Hole, though.
Yeah. Well, that would be pretty nice. Yeah. This works best at an airport where you got some corporate operators, and pay attention when they're out there, whatever, keep some resumes with you, pay attention when they're out there. You see them getting ready for an airplane or something, approach them and just be like, hey, I'm CFI over here at blah, blah, blah. I hate to bother you. I know you're busy, but I just wanted to hand you my resume. If you ever need a right seater, to sling your gear and talk on the radio for you, be the meat in the right seat, give me a call. I'll ride along with you. You don't even have to pay me. Okay.
Right.
That's your in. Okay. You may have to give it out to 10 people before you get a phone call, or 15, 20 people. I don't know. It could be the first one you hand out, you get a call, but that's how you get in. And then from there, these guys that are doing this for a living, they know everybody because, as Mike just said, it's all about networking. So maybe you fly with this guy that has a King Air for a little bit in the right seat, and he introduces you to somebody else that uses co-pilots all the time. And then from there, you learn about somebody else. And then next thing you know, somebody's wanting to send you to get your type rating in an Excel because you're the guy that they enjoy hanging out with. So that's how the corporate world in private, the private jet world that Mike and I operate in. But there's also, you're like Mike said, a corporate job. That's a big, broad term. Right? Maybe you're talking about a NetJets or a FlexJet or a flight options type of gig. Those are major, flight departments handled similar to the way a regional airline would do things. So you would get online and see what their requirements are. And that job, if that's where you're wanting to go, that job would come after you do everything I just described about, handing your resume out to somebody saying you'd sit right seat for a little bit. And then, in that job of a flight options or something, you really learn how the industry works. You get some true experience of operating in a professional environment. And then from there, if you wanted to do the, ultra supreme Fortune 50, the Coca-Colas, the P&G, the, the, any company on the planet that has private jets, from there you have the experience to move over there, and you'd be more apt to be hired, at one of those companies, if you were flying for a flight options or a flex jet or something like that, than the guy that went to the airlines and left the airlines to do it. There's a little bit of a stigma in there, which is one thing I wanted to point out to you, because you said something about in your email navigating, all the furloughed guys. I wouldn't be concerned about all the furloughed guys, because that guy, that old grumpy guy flying that King Air, you're going to be handing your resume to, saying you're a CFI, you mind if I sit right seat? He's not going to be hiring some 24-year-old kid who just got furloughed from GoJet. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Because he knows it's temporary. He knows the guy's coming in most likely, because we're pilots and we all have similar personalities, with some kind of chip on his shoulder, or it's just not going to happen. He's seen it over and over again.
Yeah, they're not going to invest in that training, and then the airlines call you back, and you go back. It's just it's not worth their time.
Right, exactly. So I would not be concerned about that. My advice would be keep plugging along. If you do have some options. I mean, if you watched the podcast we just put up, we were talking about how the industry, I know you sent this email in, let's see, September 20th, almost exactly a month ago since we're recording this. The industry is recovering, and it's going to keep recovering. It won't be long, but if you are sick of flight instructing for some reason, there's other stuff you could do besides doing that. I would definitely try to get some right seat time and something, though. But there's pipeline work. There's the mapping stuff. Lots of time building there. If you do like flight instructing, you got a knack for it. It's getting cold everywhere. Get down to Florida, where you can throw a rock and hit an airport, and every one of them usually have a flight school on it, and most of them have advanced accelerated training flight schools, because people from all over the world come to the United States, and most of them end up in Florida for flight training. So there's that.
Yep. I think any type of professional advancement you can do when you're slow is also very important. Take an opportunity. When you're busy, you have no time for that. Now you're slow, so you're making less money, but there's different ratings you can get. Maybe you're just a straight CFI, work on your CFII. You can work on multi-engine rating, seaplane rating, tail dragger rating, any of those things. You could study for your ATP written, get that knocked out of the way. I mean, there's things you could be doing with this downtime that you're not going to have time to do once things get busy, So it's like the old flying magazine slogan, right? A good pilot's always learning, right? So, take a look and see what things could be done to improve yourself also.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's good advice. I like it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I know this isn't exactly corporate work, but we just mentioned in the last podcast, there's all the freight operators. Some of these freight operators, you could end up in a 737 or a 777 with 1,500 hours if you played your cards right. And those cards could be played by what we were talking about, getting in the right seat of one of the corporate aircraft at your local airport. You hang around long enough, and this guy likes you and wants to type you, you could end up with your ATP out of that situation. And there are some there's some stipulations in that, because we got the whole it's not just the way Mike and I did it. You just take your written whatever. They got the ATP, CTP stuff in there. So there's some, but I know it can be included all in an initial type rating. So and I don't know. I mean, these owners are used to paying for that type of thing, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. Right.
Yeah, it's a big hurdle. I mean, you got to understand, this is one of the hardest hurdles in a career. But once you get into a corporate operation like that, then you start flying these bigger airplanes. The transition from props to jets, once you land that, you're in a real good spot.
Right.
It's a huge hurdle in your career.
And I should mention, I'm sorry, I mentioned that ATP thing because of that is the one big hurdle that the ABEX and
Airlines.
Southern Air, those they do want you to have an ATP in anything, and that is a major hurdle unless you're actually employed by somebody.
Yeah,
so that's why
great.
I mentioned that.
Great.
Otherwise, you could. You know what? And actually, that's just what they had listed on their website. It's possible that they've already worked around that, and they need pilots bad. I mean, they may already be hiring guys without, our restricted ATPs or ATPs. They may already be doing that. If you just get that ATP, CTP, and get your written done, they'll do the rest.
You got it. Yep. Great. Yeah.
But
I
hope this answers your question.
Yeah. And just keep plugging along there, and things are going to turn around, like we always say, I think really quickly here. So the key is you're not busy right now. Take advantage of that time, and because things are going to change before you know it, I really think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But thanks for sending the question in, Patrick. We appreciate it. And anybody else out there watching the podcast here or listening to the podcast, you can submit your question at the preferred method is podcast@ProPilotPlaybook.com.
Great. Thanks a lot.
We'll see you guys.